Oh, hey. No, I forgot something. Technology hates me today. Hello, 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 namaste, my witchlings. All right. All right. I see Grace. I see Mike. I see Will. Hello, hello. Give me just a sec. Hey, Dream. How are you doing today? All right. Oh. Oh, yeah, I hear ya. Hey, Emma. Be gentle with yourself, Grace. That is some heavy reading. All right. Namaste, my witchlings. Here we go. Take a breath. Drop your shoulders. Unclench your jaw. Unpucker your spirit. All right, so welcome one and all to Bitchin Witch, the podcast where we light candles, tell the truth, and swear like the sailor I absolutely still am at heart. Hey, hi, hello, and welcome whether you're new here or joining us for the or here regularly. I am Di, the Yoga Witch, and this is my podcast. Oh my goodness gracious griefus. It's Bitchin Witch podcast. Yes, it is. Tonight. Anyway. Tonight, my darlings, we are talking about identity, power, and the stories this culture keeps telling itself, especially the seriously fucked up ones that it pretends are just jokes or just entertainment. We are going to be talking about that racist-ass fucking video that circulated featuring the Obamas. We are going to talk about the Super Bowl halftime show, not as background noise, but as a full-blown cultural ritual, which it is. And we are going to talk about what all of this has to do with remembering who you are. Our Sanskrit word for the week is Atmanam Viddhi, know thyself. And let me be very, very clear right out of the gate here. You do not get to know yourself in isolation. We learn who we are inside systems, stories, and power structures. We learn it while being told over and over and over again who matters, who doesn't, who gets grace, and who gets turned into a fucking ass punchline. So if you're here for comfort without accountability, this is not going to be your vibe tonight. But if you are here to see clearly, swear a little, and tend the inner flame without lying to yourself, pull up a cushion, my witchlings. Let's go. Oh, it's gonna be a good ride tonight, y'all. So let's start with slowing shit down just enough to see clearly. One of the most racist pieces of content circulated rather widely depicting Barack and Michelle Obama using imagery that has always been used to dehumanize black people. Ape imagery, animalization, reduction to something less than, something mockable, something disposable. That shit, y'all, is not subtle. And it sure as fuck is not accidental. This trope has a job, and its job is simple. Strip humanity, assert dominance, and reassure some deeply insecure people that power still belongs to them. It's old. It's tired, and it works precisely because people keep pretending it's just humor. Every time somebody says, oh, relax, it's just a joke, that job gets done faster and cheaper. No hood required, no Casper cosplay, no slurs spoken aloud, no accountability demanded. Modern racism doesn't need torches or cross burnings to function. It thrives on memes, irony, and plausible deniability. It lives in that oily little gap where someone can say something vile and then retreat behind, you're reading too much into it, or you're too sensitive, or my personal favorite, it wasn't meant that way. My darlings, that is not humor. That is cowardice with Wi-Fi. All right. Let us be very, very, very clear about something people love to pretend is complicated. Intent does not erase the impact. Ever. If a symbol has been used for centuries to justify enslavement, violence, and dehumanization, you don't get to pretend it's neutral because you slapped a fork and punchline on it. Context matters. History matters. Power matters. And let's be even more honest here, y'all. Barack and Michelle Obama are not just any old individuals. They're not just some Joe Blow black person on the street. They are symbols. They are symbols of intelligence, dignity, love, competence, partnership, and legacy. Everything white supremacist narratives have always fucking hated. They represent a direct contradiction to the myth that black excellence is rare, accidental, or undeserved. So when you can't erase them, you ridicule them. When ridicule doesn't land, you dehumanize them. And when that still gets called out, you gaslight the fuck out of the people who noticed. That escalation is not random. It is strategy. Animalization has always been the precursor to violence. If you can convince people someone is less than human, you can convince them that they deserve less protection, less empathy, less grief when harm comes to them. That's not dramatic either. That is historical fact. Every genocide, every system of racial terror, every campaign of ethnic cleansing starts with language and imagery that says those people are not like us. And no, memes do not make that harmless. They make it more efficient. What really, really exposes the rot is how quickly people rush to minimize the harm. It's not that deep. You're overreacting. Why are you so angry about this? That instinct to smooth it over isn't neutrality. It's alignment. It is choosing comfort over truth, and it is prioritizing the feelings of the people who did the harm over the people who are expected to just absorb it quietly. That is not being apolitical. That is being complicit. By being silent, you are telling them that it's okay to say and do that shit. Now, here's where I'm going to push back hard on a cultural lie that we have all been sold. Anger is not a failure of spirituality, intellect, or emotional maturity. Anger is information. Discomfort, information. That gut level, what the fuck was that? Reaction that you felt in your body is information that your nervous system is giving you. Who'da thunk, right? Atmanam Viddhi, know thyself, does not mean be endlessly calm in the face of injustice. Fuck that shit. It means knowing when something lands as wrong before your brain tries to rationalize it away to keep the peace. Your body is older than your social conditioning. It knows the smell of dehumanization, even when it's wrapped up in humor. You don't need a PhD in sociology to recognize blatant racism. You don't need to write a dissertation to clock harm. You do not need permission to trust your own perception, despite the fact the government is currently trying to quote from 1984 and say, that Where did it go? The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. Because if you trusted your own reactions, you might stop laughing along. You might stop sharing the meme. You might stop protecting people who are very invested in not being held accountable. And that would be inconvenient for systems that rely on your silence to keep running smoothly. And here's something a lot of people do not like to admit. Cleverness has never been a requirement for violence. Actually, ordinary people commit extraordinary harm every single day simply by refusing to see what's right smack in front of them. Racism doesn't need brilliance. It needs participation. It needs minimization. It needs people willing to say, well, that doesn't affect me, so obviously it's not a problem. That shrug, my friend, is not harmless. It's a fucking permission slip. Now, if all of this is making you uncomfortable, good. Sit with that. Because discomfort is not danger. It's a signal that something is brushing up against your values and asking you whether you actually mean them. Growth doesn't come from being soothed all the time. It comes from refusing to numb out when something is clearly wrong. So no. This is not about being humorless and not able to take a joke. It's about being honest and refusing to pretend that dehumanization becomes acceptable when it's dressed up as entertainment. Racism doesn't have to be clever to be fucking violent. It just has to be tolerated. And every single fucking time we choose to see it clearly, name it plainly, and refuse to laugh along, we interrupt the machine just a smidge. Not with perfection or with purity, but with presence and awareness. With the radical act of believing our own bodies when they say something here is wrong. That's not weakness. That's clarity, my friends. Time for a sip. Now let's zoom out. Why the fuck does shit like this spread so blasted easily? Why does it reliably pop up around massive cultural moments right when every single person's attention is loosely gathered in one place? Oh, my darlings. Because spectacle is one hell of a delivery system. The Super Bowl has entered the chat. The Super Bowl is not just a football game. It's one of the largest synchronized rituals of American life. Millions and millions of people watching the same thing at the same time, half distracted, emotionally open, snacks in hand, guard down. It's not a space designed for nuance or critical thinking. It's a space designed for absorption. And that, my witchlings, makes it powerful as fuck. Halftime is where this power gets interesting because halftime is never, ever, ever just music. It's a cultural referendum. It's about who gets centered, whose bodies get celebrated, whose language is heard without subtitles, whose culture is framed as universal versus political. Who among us remembers last year's Super Bowl halftime show? Because every single fucking year the same gods be damned pattern plays out. White nostalgia acts, oh, those are just entertainment. Artists of color, why is everything so political now? Queer performers, oh, think of the children. Anything outside of the dominant narrative, un-American. That reaction right there tells you every single thing you need to know. Because the fear isn't the music. It's losing control of the story and the narrative. This, my friends, is where the ending matters. The ending of this year's show, oh my God, was it powerful as fuck? The choice of symbols matters. His closing message, we are all America, was not vague. Hell, even people who don't speak a lick of Spanish understood that part. He was followed by the flags of every country in the American continents, not just the United States, not just the stars and stripes and eagle imagery, all of it. North America, Central America, South America, the fucking Caribbean. A visual, blatant visual, unmistakable visual reminder that America is not just a single country. It's not even a single continent. It's an entire hemisphere shaped by migration, colonization, survival, and cultural exchange. That ending directly challenges the narrow exclusionary version of America that white supremacist ideology clings to. The version where American means white, English-speaking, Christian, straight, cisgender, and comfortably ignorant of how the entire rest of the world connects to this land. We are all America doesn't mean everything is the same. It means the story is bigger than the one you were taught to protect. And that, my darling dears, is exactly why backlash shows up right on cue. Because spectacle cuts both ways. The same system that allows racist garbage to spread quickly also allows counter-narratives to land equally as deep, sometimes deeper than people realize in the moment. When you slip a truth into a spectacle, it bypasses the usual defenses. It lands emotionally before people have time to argue with it. That's not an accident. That, my friends, is strategy. Which brings us to Bad Bunny and the deliberate choices in his staging. Bad Bunny didn't create a glossy abstract set designed to be forgotten as soon as the commercials rolled. He highlighted real businesses, real neighborhoods, real storefronts, places that actually exist and serve actual communities. That matters. Because it refuses the idea that culture is only valid when it's sanitized, corporate, and detached from lived reality. That stage wasn't a fantasy version of Latin culture designed to be easily consumed. It was grounded, local, specific. And specificity is threatening to systems that prefer people to be interchangeable. When you show real businesses, you're saying these people are here. They're contributing. They're rooted. They have put down roots in their community. They're not just an aesthetic. They're not a trend. They are not something you get to enjoy and then toss away when it's no longer convenient. Again, spectacle as delivery system. Hell, even Bad Bunny dancing on the power poles was a fucking message. Now, we're going to talk about the ending image that had people scrambling to rewrite reality in real time. The little boy he hands the Grammy to. Now, so many people, I've seen this all over the internet, so many people think that was Liam. The child at the end was not Liam. His name was Lincoln. He is not a random prop or a sentimental add-on. He is a child actor portraying a young Benito, young Bad Bunny, standing there as the world looked on. That distinction matters. Because the story being told wasn't look at my kid or look at this kid. It was, dude, look how far we've come. Oh, goodness, I'm so sorry, y'all. That final moment reframed the entire performance as lineage. Past to present. Dream to reality. A kid from Puerto Rico to one of the biggest stages on the planet. Not through assimilation. Oh, dear gods, no, not by assimilation. Not by erasing where he came from, but by bringing it with him, celebrating it unapologetically into a place that has historically excluded people like him unless they made themselves smaller and more palatable. And then the Grammy. The Grammy wasn't just an award placement. No, 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 no. That, my friends, was punctuation. A visual thesis statement. A quiet but unmistakable, you told us this didn't belong here, and yet here it is. Here we are. That Grammy in that little boy's hands wasn't about individual achievement. It was more collective possibility. It was a message to every single kid watching who's been told their language is too much, or their culture is too loud, or their roots are too political. It said, this world tried to make me invisible. I grew anyway. This is why backlash always clusters around moments like this. Racist imagery and cultural panic orbit the same events because they're both attempts to reassert dominance. To say, no, 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 this is who America really belongs to yank the story back into familiar, controllable lines. But the spectacle had already done its work. Atmanam Viddhi at the cultural level asks a very dangerous question. What story are we trying to protect here, and who gets sacrificed to keep it intact? When people get angry at the "we are all America," they are telling you exactly which version of America they're invested in. One that requires forgetting history. One that requires erasing entire continents of influence. One that only feels stable if certain people remain grateful guests instead of full-on participants. That is why those flags mattered. That's why the businesses mattered. And the little boy. And the Grammy at the end. None of that was random. None of it was accidental. Even right down to the flower Lady Gaga wore over her heart. It was a deliberate use of spectacle to tell a story that refuses to shrink. And when you understand that, the backlash stops being confusing and it becomes predictable, almost boring in its consistency. Because power hates being reminded that it's not the only author of the narrative. Spectacle doesn't just entertain. It teaches, it normalizes, and it rewrites the frame of what people subconsciously accept as who belongs. Oh, my eye is burning. And that's exactly why some people lose their fucking minds when the story expands beyond them. Not because it's un-American, but because it exposes how small their definition has always been. Yeah. You know what? I am going to pop into the chat real quick. Oh, I have seen some of the clips of he who is the same age as Ricky Martin and looks 20 years older, forgetting that he was supposed to still be singing. Oh, it was great. Okay. All right. Okay. Moving on. There we go. Had to catch my brain up with what I'm doing here. So, here's where everything gets sharper. The racist video, the backlash to the halftime show, meaning the alternative halftime show that was so bad. The panic around visibility, none of that exists in isolation. It's a part of a much, much larger system that survives by telling people who they're allowed to be. And when people step outside those boundaries, the culture doesn't just disagree, it deploys tropes. Tropes are not random. They are containment strategies. So we're going to talk about a few tropes here. We're going to start with the angry black women trope. This one exists to police tone. It's to say your anger is the problem, not what you're responding to. It reframes justified rage as irrational hostility, so the focus shifts away from harm and onto how uncomfortable someone feels witnessing it. The message is clear. Speak softly, smile more, or you're going to be punished for disrupting the peace you were never invited into in the first place. Next, the queer groomer. This one infuriates me, sorry. The queer groomer trope exists to weaponize fear. It turns queerness itself into suspicion. It says your existence is dangerous, especially if there are children nearby. It collapses identity into predation so that queerness must constantly prove its innocence just to be allowed in public spaces. That trope isn't about protection. It's about erasure through moral panic. The "a trans woman is really just a man in a dress" trope exists to strip trans women of legitimacy and humanity. It reframes identity as deception. It tells the world that trans women are threats by default, liars seeking access rather than people seeking safety, dignity, and the right to exist without constant surveillance. It's a way of saying you don't get to define yourself, we get to define you for our comfort. And these tropes all do the exact same fucking thing. They say, stay in your lane. They say, remember who you are. And what they mean is, remember who we say you are. And here's a part that a lot of people struggle with because, well, nuance makes people itchy twitchy. Tropes don't come from nowhere. I'll be honest. They don't just spring up out of the ether. A lot of them do exist because there is observable patterns, some lived reality, some historical context behind them. Anger exists, abuse exists, mental illness exists, neurodivergence exists, and trauma definitely exists. But here is a lie that turns observation into violence. A pattern is not a prison. A stereotype becomes oppressive when it's treated as the only story, when it's used not to understand complexity, but to erase it, when one data point becomes destiny. The angry black woman trope ignores the softness, humor, patience, brilliance, and care that so many black women I know have and are. The queer groomer trope ignores families, teachers, mentors, protectors, and children who are straight up safer because queer adults exist in their lives. The trans panic joke ignores that the overwhelming reality... See, I'm getting frustrated. The trans panic trope ignores the overwhelming reality that trans women are far more likely to be harmed than to do harm. These tropes aren't meant to describe reality. They are straight up meant to limit possibility. And that is why remembering who you are is such a fucking threat. Because remembering isn't abstract. It's embodied and lived. It's refusing to collapse yourself into the most convenient version of you for someone else's worldview. And this ain't theoretical for me. This is personal. I am a woman living with mental illness. That does not mean that I am unstable, unreliable, or unfit. All things I have been accused of because of my mental illness. It means my brain has seen some shit. And I now live with the after effects of that. That distinction matters. Mental illness is not a moral failure, it's not a lack of intelligence, and it sure as fuck is not a ticking time bomb when treated properly. It's a nervous system that adapted to survive circumstances that required adaptation. Pathologizing that survival is so much easier than addressing the conditions that made it necessary. I am neurodivergent. I am autistic and ADHD. That does not mean that my intelligence is limited. It means that my brain is literally wired differently than a neurotypical brain. different processing, different sensory input, different rhythms of attention and focus. And that difference is often framed as deficiency only because the current systems of society are built for a narrow-ass fucking range of minds that then punish everyone else for not fitting cleanly inside them. That's how tropes work, though. They take a difference and call it a defect. And here's where Atmanam, Viddhi, know thyself, gets its teeth. Knowing yourself in a culture that profits from misnaming you is not passive. It is not a self-care slogan. It is an ongoing refusal to internalize distorted narratives just because they're repeated loudly and often enough. It means noticing when a joke lands wrong and not laughing it off to keep the fucking peace. It means recognizing when a story feels familiar because it's been drilled into you, not because it's true. It means interrogating why certain people are expected to prove their humanity over and over and over while others are granted it by default. This isn't about pretending stereotypes never map out into reality. That's childish and dishonest. This is about refusing to let one story stand in for the whole. You've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. You've met one black woman, well, you've met one black woman. You've met one gay person? Yeah, you know what I'm saying. Because the moment a stereotype becomes totalizing, it stops being descriptive and starts being disciplinary. It tells people what will happen if they step outside the role assigned to them. It teaches the audience how to respond with fear, dismissal, mockery, or even violence when someone refuses to comply. And that's why visibility is always met with backlash. When Puerto Rican culture is centered without apology, the message is we are more than a footnote. When black excellence is presented as ordinary rather than exceptional, the message is we were never an accident. When queer and trans people exist openly, joyfully, mundanely, the message is your panic is not my responsibility. And when people living with mental illness or neurodivergence speak plainly about our lives without shame, the message is your assumptions about us were lazy. Remembering who you are doesn't mean denying your struggles. It means refusing to let your struggles become the sum total of your identity. It means saying, yes, this is part of my story, but it's not the whole book. And for those watching, especially those with the privilege to look away, there's a responsibility here too. What narratives did you absorb because they were easy? Whose complexity did you flatten because it made your life simpler? And where have you confused familiarity with truth? You don't have to be perfect, but you do have to be honest. And honesty sometimes sounds like, I believed that stereotype a little bit longer than I should have. Honesty sometimes sounds like, well, I laughed because it was easier than speaking up. Honesty sometimes sounds like, I am realizing how small the story I was protecting actually is. Remembering who you are, individually and collectively, is radical because it breaks the spell. It disrupts the neat categories that power depends on. It replaces caricature with complexity. And complexity, my friends, is so much harder to control. That's why the culture keeps trying to remind people to stay in their lane. That's why the harsh, cruel, extensive punishment comes when people don't. And here's the truth underneath all of that. These lanes were never natural. They were constructed. And remembering who you are, who you actually are, is how you realize you were never meant to fit inside them in the first fucking place. That remembering, messy, embodied, and unapologetic, isn't just self-knowledge. It's liberation. So what do we do about all of this? Let me take a sip and we'll get into that. So what do we do with all of this? Well, we don't just analyze it. We don't just smile and nod along. And we don't just, we don't just feel righteous in private and then go quiet when it matters. What we do? We choose better stories. Not louder or prettier ones, truer ones. And choosing better stories isn't passive, it's behavioral. It shows up in rooms where it would be so much easier to stay silent. It shows up in relationships where calling something out might make things a little bit awkward. It shows up when someone you like, you love, you work with, or even rely on casually. Wait. My brain just glitched. So, it shows up when someone you like, love, work with, or rely on just casually says something racist, ableist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic, or dehumanizing, and expect you to just let it slide because, well, you know how they are. They didn't mean anything by it. No. No. You know how you are. And part of knowing yourself, really, truly knowing yourself, is knowing what you will and will not stand for. Not in theory, not in posts, not in values you claim when the stakes are low, but in real time with real people when the air goes tight and your stomach drops and you realize, this is one of those moments. If something is important to you, protecting kids, protecting women, protecting queer and trans people, protecting disabled people, or protecting anyone who is routinely harmed by lazy narratives, and you are standing next to someone who casually says something that harms that group, you speak the fuck up. Not because you enjoy confrontation, not because you want to feel not because you want to feel morally superior, but because silence is not neutral. Silence is not neutral. Silence is participation. By not calling them out on their bullshit, you are telling them that you are okay with what they are saying and doing. We like to pretend there's a middle ground where we can personally disagree, but externally do nothing and still call ourselves ethical. That space doesn't actually exist. If harm is happening and you are quiet, you've made a choice. You have chosen comfort over alignment. You've chosen ease over integrity. And that choice teaches everybody around you something about what you value. Knowing who you are means standing up for who you are, even when it's uncomfortable, inconvenient, or costly. Especially then, because values that only function when they're easy are not values, they are preferences. This is where a lot of people get stuck, because they confuse being nice with being good. Niceness is about smoothing things over. Goodness is about refusing to let harm pass unchallenged just to keep the fucking peace. And no, this does not mean screaming at everyone all the time. You do not need to go full on Karen. It doesn't mean public shaming as default. It doesn't mean perfection or purity or turning every interaction into a courtroom fucking drama. It means clarity. It means saying things like, dude, that joke wasn't funny. Or, that's actually not accurate and it's harmful to people. Or, I'm not okay with talking about that group that way. Or just, dude, that crossed a line. That's it. That's the whole sentence. If someone reacts defensively, well, that's some information for you. If someone doubles down, yup, more information. If someone pauses and recalibrates, that's information too. But what matters most is you stayed aligned with yourself. You walk your talk. Because if you truly know yourself, you will not allow behaviors that go against your morals and ethics to just happen around you unchecked. You won't outsource responsibility to someone else. You won't hide behind, oh, that's just how they were raised. You won't excuse harm because the person causing it is otherwise kind to you. Ask any abused spouse, survivor of domestic violence, about that one. This, my friends, is where choosing better stories becomes lived experience and lived practice. We stop excusing dehumanization because it's wrapped in humor. We stop pretending both sides applies to basic human fucking dignity. We stop acting like calling something out is worse than the thing being called out. We remember that cultural rituals, be they games, shows, media events, conversations at work, or jokes at the dinner table, are mirrors. They show us who we are and what we tolerate. And if we don't like the reflection, we don't smash the fucking mirror. We adjust the goddamn light. Adjusting the light looks like interrupting a harmful narrative in the moment it appears. It looks like refusing to laugh along. It looks like gently but firmly redirecting a conversation. It looks like setting boundaries that say, that don't fly with me. Atmanam Viddhi, know thyself, means remembering that you are not just consuming culture, you are participating in it. Every single time you share something, excuse something, challenge something, or ignore something, you are reinforcing a story about what is acceptable. You do not have to fight every battle. I mean, come on. How many of us are parents? Do you fight every single battle with your kids? It's not sustainable. And truthfully, it's not honest. But you do have to decide who the fuck you are while the battle exists. Are you someone who notices harm and freezes? Or someone who notices it and rationalizes it away? Or someone who notices and quietly aligns your behavior with your values? Those are choices. Repeated choices become your identity. And calling things out doesn't just protect others, it protects you. It protects that slow-ass erosion that happens when your outward behavior no longer matches your internal compass. That erosion is exhausting. It's why people feel disconnected, cynical, and numb. Integrity is grounding even when it's hard. And trust me, I know it's hard. Standing up for what you believe does not mean you're always going to get it right. We're human. You're going to stumble. You'll miss moments. You'll realize later you should have said something and didn't. And honey, that's part of being human. It is not a moral failure. What matters is whether you're willing to learn and whether you're willing to try again next time. Because the alternative is letting the worst stories run unopposed simply because confronting them would make things awkward. And awkwardness, my friends, awkwardness is not a crisis. What is a crisis is allowing dehumanization to normalize while telling ourselves we're good people because, well, I didn't personally start it. Choosing better stories means choosing them out loud. Choosing them when it costs you a little social capital. Choosing them when it would be easier to scroll past, look away, or laugh it off. Knowing who you are is not just an internal realization, it's an external practice. It's the movement. Never mind. It's the moment where your values leave your mouth and enter the room. It's the moment where you decide that your ethics are not decorative. So no, you don't need to be perfect. You don't have to be a hero. And you don't have to win every single fucking argument. But you do have to be honest about who you are. And if you truly know yourself, you will not allow stories that violate your morals to go unchallenged in your presence. Not because you're righteous, but because you're aligned. That alignment, that, my friend, is how better stories actually manage to take root. Not in theory, in practice. check in with the chat. There we go. Oh, thank you for the flower, Grace. Ah. All right. Love the typos. Not you, Andrea. Yeah. I'm so glad I'm fluent in typo most of the time. Skylar has learning disability. Yep, exactly. Mm-hmm. Skylar needs the key that my kids do. Echolele is not your friend. I hadn't even read what you wrote yet, but yeah, echolele is not your friend. It's very much an autism thing. You're good, Skylar. We deal with echolele in this house a lot. Oh my gosh. Yup. Yup. I drive you nuts doing the same thing. You're good, Skylar. Oh. Yup. All right. We're going to wrap up here and we're going to actually we're going to bring it back to our bodies here because we've been talking about a pretty heavy topic tonight, right? Right. Good. So we're going to take left hand on heart. Take a nice deep breath. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Now remember this, my friends, my loves, my witchlings. Spread love, spread joy, spread kindness. Note I say kindness, not niceness. Tell the people you love that you love them in all the forms they exist. 2 legs, 4 legs, wings, fur, scales, paws, and claws. Say it loud. Say it often. Make it awkward if you have to. Do not wait for the, quote, right moment because that's bullshit and we all know it. We don't have the perfect time and we don't know how long we have with them. And now if you take only one thing away from everything I do here, every class, every stream, every rant, every ritual, let it be this. You are loved. You are wanted. You are needed. And you genuinely do have a reason and a purpose for being here, even if you don't know what the fuck it is yet. I didn't find mine until I was 45. Your existence matters. Your presence matters. And the world is truly a better place because you're in it, my friends. Thank you all for being here. I love you guys to bits. You are the absolute best part of my day. Thank you also for remembering who you are. Namaste, witchlings. Namaste. I'll see you soon.